It's time to focus on seniors with Helping Seniors TV. The television show designed to make you aware of senior issues and needs, as well as to acquaint you with the resources available to help you age in place and with dignity. Now, here's your host, Joe Steckler.
I'm Joe Steckler, and welcome to Helping Seniors, the television arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County. Our show is designed to provide you with information on how to develop your own aging and care plans. Our topic today is elder abuse, and joining me is Laura Moody, Assistant State Attorney. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We did a radio show recently, and as soon as we finished the radio show, I said, we've got to do that same show on TV.
Well, good. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you because elder abuse is a frightening topic. It is a topic that is shoved into the closet more than many other topics. Right. Families are afraid to discuss it, and it's ironic that most of the elder abuse occurs within a family. Right. And I think it's extremely important that our viewing audience knows more about it. And this is your strong point as an attorney. This is what you do. So, absolutely. What is elder abuse, Laura?
Well, elder abuse takes the form of financial abuse, physical abuse. We see many neglect cases here in Brevard County. It can be sexual abuse or emotional abuse. Those are really the 5 categories of when we're talking about elder abuse, what we're talking about. In Brevard County, we see really two broad areas that are the most number of cases we see, which would be our financial cases, our exploitation cases, as well as our physical abuse cases.
Generally speaking, when people say you have a problem, they want to report it. But elder abuse, it's been my own personal experience that people are reluctant to report elder abuse for maybe fear of causing a problem or getting themselves involved in a situation they don't want to be involved in. But I would like for you to sort of debunk that theory a little bit and tell our viewing audience how to report elder abuse and why it's important that they do it and how you all protect the people that do the informing.
Absolutely. A few things that are so important to know about reporting abuse is that we can't help it stop unless we know it's happening. And it certainly is an underreported problem. So the first thing I encourage people to do is always to report any suspected abuse to the abuse hotline. That is 1-800-96-ABUSE. And that is the Department of Children and Families. That will start a case going. And essentially what will happen is if the Department of Children and Families finds something they believe is criminal that needs some law enforcement involvement, they will then contact the local law enforcement agency to get involved. A few things that are really important to know about that process. The reporter is confidential. Many people tell me they are afraid to report abuse because they don't want the perpetrator to know that they've reported the abuse, but it's really important to know that the Department of Children and Families does not release that name or that information to anybody, including us. They don't release it to law enforcement or to the state attorney's office. The second thing that's really important to know is that DCF has no interest in coming and removing people from their homes. I get a lot of elderly individuals who are concerned that if they make a report, they will be put into a nursing home or put into an assisted living facility before they're ready to be put into a nursing home. So it's really important to know that DCF's priority is not to remove adults from their home. I think there's some confusion about that because of the child investigation side of DCF that many times do have to remove children. So the first thing to know is that adults don't just get removed from their homes, and nobody is really interested in taking away people's independence. And I think the number one thing people are afraid of reporting is that they somehow will lose their independence. I like to give people their independence back because usually in elder abuse situations, these are individuals who are being isolated, bullied, intimidated, and actually by reporting it, they take a little bit of their power back. So people I think generally are afraid to report these crimes because they believe they will lose independence, when actually those who've gone through the process, I think, would tell you they actually get some of their control and their independence back by reporting it.
I know for a fact that I've had to make several calls in the course of my professional work. I've called to report abuse. And I know that the person one of the people I called to report, I told them if they didn't change what they were doing, I was going to call and report them for self-abuse. Now, they didn't make a change. I made a phone call. To this day, that person has not spoken to me.
Right.
But in reflection, I realized that had I not made that phone call, if something more serious would have happened, that probably would have preyed on my mind more than just the simple fact that the person doesn't want to talk to me. I didn't really lose a great friend, but I do know that I did the right thing. And I've spoken to social workers over the years, and I've said, how do you know when to make the call? And they said, Joe, the most important thing to do is to go to the professional people that is their job, tell them what the problem is, and let them help you make the decision as to what should be done. And I think that's pretty good advice, isn't it?
I think if you have a suspicion, and the law does say, when you suspect abuse, neglect, or exploitation, that really all individuals are mandatory reporters. People think that certain occupations are reporters, but actually anybody is. So I always encourage people, if you have a suspicion, there's a reason you have a suspicion. If you see red flags, there is probably something going on that's causing you to have those suspicious beliefs or those red flags, and it can never hurt to make a call. And like I said before, if you do report something, you will be kept confidential, and you could potentially save somebody's life, prevent further harm from happening, prevent somebody's entire retirement from being depleted without their consent. So you really can intervene. And that may be all that's necessary, is some intervention to let a perpetrator know, hey, we know what you're doing, we're on to you, and you need to correct your activities. So making somebody aware of that can help to curb the abuse that's happening in the shadows.
We could talk about different pieces of the puzzle, but can you give our viewing audience an example and then tell how that example touches possibly exploitation or the financial aspect or reporting or some of the dangers?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. A typical case we would see would be a caregiver, or generally, as you mentioned earlier, a family member who moves in with the elderly individual, or vice versa. They tend to get access to their financial accounts. Almost all of our cases that we see, they may encourage being added to a bank account for convenience purposes. They'll usually first tell our victims that they need to be on the account so they can help pay bills or write checks or assist them in their transacting on a daily basis. And then what happens is a lot of individuals don't know the various legal repercussions of putting somebody as a joint account holder on a bank account, and that now that person has free access to their finances. They don't know that if you sign a power of attorney, a durable power of attorney, that person could actually change your estate plan. So what happens, we see individuals who give away a lot of authority and power to somebody who may be a caregiver or a family member, and then they utilize that access to then steal money, take money, misappropriate money for their own usage. We've seen individuals who will take that elderly individual, place them at a facility, and then use their money to go on vacations, to buy vehicles, to buy luxury items that are not for the benefit of our elderly individual. And so generally, I like to give that example because it's the most common way we see exploitation happen, is usually by the person giving some access. Usually these cases don't come in by a complete stranger who had no involvement with the individual. Usually there is an element of access that's been given to a caregiver or a family member, usually for convenience purposes, that then is exploited and taken advantage of.
I'm sure you also find is, since you and I did the radio show, it was brought to my attention that one of the greatest sources for getting people to come in and be caregivers are from church vestibule bulletin boards. And people will see a name there, they'll make the phone call and get the person to come in. And quite often, probably more often than not, these people have their money taken from them by these people that put their names up in churches thinking that they're going to provide a good service for somebody.
Right. And what I really like to caution people about is that these offenders, they aren't going to come with masks and guns. They aren't the scary robber that you think of when you think of a criminal. Generally, are the predators who prey upon vulnerable adults and elderly individuals are very nice. They do not come in a threatening, scary manner. But the problem is they then turn scary and threatening. And we've seen it time after time where they will get access through some type of organization, church, social group, neighborhood, or they're a family member. They'll gain access as a very friendly face. It's going to be a very big help to the person. And then once they get access to the funds or they start physically abusing a person or neglecting them, that is where we start to see that behavior change, and they become very isolating, very dominating, and very threatening, which is why these cases many times don't get reported. So I always caution people to do your homework on who it is you're bringing into your house. If you have somebody coming in, look at who knows them, who can give good references for them, because just because they're friendly or come through a church does not necessarily mean you won't be victimized.
And the sad part of that is that while we say to go through licensed agencies because the agencies perform background checks on the people, sometimes, and I hate to say it, but the background check isn't worth the paper it's written on.
Right.
Why is that?
Right. It is better than no background check, but I would certainly agree that many of our offenders that we prosecute through the state attorney's office, through our elder crimes unit, have no criminal history. They passed the background check, and this is the first time they've committed a crime. So it is certainly better to have somebody licensed, bonded, insured, absolutely, because there are some repercussions that can happen on the back end of something criminal, but it certainly is no guarantee that they will.
Well, wait a minute now. If you take a service person from a licensed agency, then doesn't the licensed agency, by virtue of the fact they're performing their service, don't they become liable for cash losses or anything?
They certainly can be, yes, and
yes.
We've seen that.
But if you just hire somebody off the street,
right,
you have no recourse to get any money back at all, because the only way you can get it back is because going through a lawsuit to sue them. And if you sue somebody that has no money, that's why trial attorneys don't go out and sue somebody if they don't have insurance.
Right.
Pretty simple statement.
Mm-hmm.
It says to me that you should be very, very careful in who you let into your home.
Absolutely.
Our news show about elder abuse would be complete if we didn't talk about scams that affect grandparents and the elderly. And one of the most prevalent that comes to my mind is what we call the grandparent scam. Would you explain to our viewing audience exactly what is the grandparent scam? Absolutely.
What happens with the grandparent scam, a person will be usually asleep at night because the offenders know what time zone they're calling. So you'll get a phone call at about 2 or 3 in the morning. It'll be very urgent that a relative, it could be a child, a grandchild, a niece, a nephew, somebody has been arrested or is in some urgent situation, usually in another country, and they need to be bonded out of jail, or they need money to be evacuated from a country, some kind of emergency has happened. And so they'll provide instructions on how to contact the embassy, how to make provisions to release the person from jail. So a few things that the scam always has, depending on what the story is being told, is it's some family member, they have identified that you will in fact have a family member by this particular name, but there will be an incredible sense of urgency that this needs to be done immediately, and why money needs to be wired immediately or sent Western Union immediately. So I always tell people red flags to be aware of at any high, rapid pressure type of call. The first thing that a person should do is call the family member to determine if they are in fact out of the country. And they're generally going to find that they are not out of the country. But it's been a very successful scam. It has been around for many years, and we continue to see people lose money to the tune of thousands of dollars to these individuals.
You mentioned that you knew somebody that got bilked out of about $7,500.
Yes.
I had somebody that paid $7,200.
Yes.
And I called to one person. I said, "Gee, I didn't know your grandson was out of the country." He said, "It's not." And I said, "They just sent you a telegram saying you needed money." Somehow they find out. They tap into our mail list, and in all my talk with people, and when somebody calls me and says, somebody needs money, I always tell them, check before you send money.
Yes.
I would say 99 and 100% of the time it's a scam.
It really almost always is a scam. What I tell people is if you are being contacted, generally probably going to be a scam. If you are contacting another company, you're probably reaching the legitimate company. So that holds true for the electric company scams. If you get a call from FP&L, they're going to turn your lights off. Call Florida Power and Light and find out, because they're usually not going to call you and threaten you that you need to send a money order or your electricity is going to be turned off. They're going to send you notices.
Well, that's one of the keys. That should be a key.
Yes.
FP&L and other insurance companies, they don't send you an email saying it's something. They send you an official letter.
Correct. So the IRS will not call you and threaten to put you in jail. They have made that very clear. So if you are getting phone calls claiming to be the IRS, generally speaking, that's a scam. So the big thing I tell people is if somebody has reached out to you, do a little legwork and find out if you're really talking to the legitimate company or person. And that really holds true for all of the scams that we see. Microsoft will not call you to help you fix a virus on your computer. Bright House will not call you to help fix a virus on your computer. So really, anytime you're being solicited for personal identification information, your credit card numbers, or you're being asked to send money, you're being scammed.
And the one thing is, you should never give your Social Security number to anybody you don't know unless you have absolutely...
Right. We see a lot of calls to confirm information where we will have perpetrators call to confirm credit card numbers, to confirm Social Security numbers, to confirm addresses. And those are very scary because they do get access to a tremendous amount of personal information. So anytime you're getting called to confirm these types of things, really no legitimate company is doing that. So it's somebody who's fishing for information.
And I think something else in the time we have left, I would like for you to talk to our viewing audience about the importance of putting your name on a joint bank account and what are some of the perils you open yourself up to for family members to steal you blind. Right.
One of the ways that we see people really get access to a lot of money and to really do a lot of damage is by getting access to a bank account. So it's just really important to talk. If you're considering putting somebody on as a convenient signer, make sure that you talk to your banker about identifying them as that on the account, that they're not a joint account holder, that they don't have access to the funds as if they were their own, but that they are merely on the account to sign checks or to assist with paying bills. And there are different ways that people can be named on an account. They can be named as somebody who has power of attorney, or as a trustee, or just as a convenient signer. So I always encourage people, if you are thinking of putting somebody onto your bank account, make sure you talk with your banker about the way that they can be on the account to limit their control over the monies. When somebody is a true joint account holder on an account, they now actually own the entirety of the fund as well. So we have had a difficult time prosecuting those cases until recently. The legislature did make a change with regard to exploitation, where if we can prove that the person put them on the account really for the sole purpose of assisting them, even if they're labeled joint account holders, we may be able to prosecute. Prior to 2014, that was not the case. And we got a lot of calls that we could not do anything about because the joint account holder actually was the owner of those funds, just like the victim. So really important to talk with your bankers about how you want the person to be able to access the account.
As a state attorney, do you get involved? Does your office get involved with attorneys in protested guardianship cases, or where families have done something wrong with the use of money? Or is that a complete separate area?
Well, yes and no. We would never be involved in the civil case. We would not be involved in the guardianship case or a probate case. Our office, Phil Archer, is the state attorney, and we prosecute criminal cases only. Okay. But there is some overlap. So when I say yes and no, what I mean by that is there may be a probate or guardianship case where there's some allegation that criminal wrongdoing was part of that case, and we may have an exploitation case or a neglect case that is running somewhat at the same time as the probate or guardianship case. We may actually have a case where we have a victim in our case that doesn't have a guardian yet, that we think should have a guardian because they have nobody else to care for them. So we may actually ask DCF or ask the court system to start that process, but we don't petition for guardianship. We wouldn't be a party in that litigation, but we many times do have cases that kind of run simultaneously with a guardianship case or a probate case because there are some allegations of criminal wrongdoing.
There's two things I want to ask. Before I want to give our viewing audience your contact information. I want to do that before because I want to ask you another question.
Okay, absolutely. I'm with the state attorney's office. The state attorney here for Brevard and Seminole counties is Phil Archer. Our main office is here in Viera, Florida, and we are at 321-617-7510. And you can also email us if you wanted to at lmoody@sa18.org, but phone is...
Or you can call our office at 473-7770, and Kay will give me your phone number. But the question I wanted to ask you, we're talking about elder abuse, we're talking about scams, we're doing anything else, but we live in Brevard County, Florida. We have a lot of seniors that live here that have extended families that live in other states. Mm-hmm. What kind of control, or how do you get involved in the prosecution of criminal cases if somebody lives, let's say, in Virginia, and you have family members here? If somebody's perpetrated something on somebody from the state of Virginia, do you have any kind of a jurisdiction? Can you work those cases?
It depends. Many times what we'll see, if we have the victim who resides here, if the bank accounts are here, if some of the activity that's happened is here in Brevard County, we would have the authority to prosecute a case. Even if the offender lived in another state, we have brought people back. We have extradited people from other states who have committed a crime by utilizing bank funds that the victim resides here, the bank accounts are here, and we that we have sufficient ties to charge them here locally, and vice versa. If we had a defendant who lived here in Brevard County who was committing a crime, say over the internet or something like that, where the victim might live out of state, we could potentially prosecute them because we would have ties to the defendant. So if the crime happens here or if the victim resides here, that would give us sufficient jurisdiction to prosecute a case here.
It's interesting. It raises a lot of questions about jurisdiction.
Correct. Now I will tell you, there are many times where if most of the criminal activity is happening in another state, we have phenomenal law enforcement agencies here that will actually do a lot of the legwork and then submit a case up to another state. And we have actually done that as well, where we've had criminal activity where the victim might be here, but all the transacting, all the really, if it's a check case where they're cashing checks and all of that was done, and we know most of the witnesses are going to reside in another state, then they may prepare a case and submit it to that agency for prosecution. And we've done both.
So if people have a question, the smart thing to do would be to call your office.
Absolutely. There are two things I would say. First, contact law enforcement if it's an emergency, obviously. We want law enforcement contacted first. If anybody believes that a crime is occurring, contact the local law enforcement agency. When they believe they have probable cause that a crime's been committed, then they submit the case to us. Also, DCF is another inroad to get a case started, calling the abuse hotline. But then if people aren't getting the answers that they think that they should hear, certainly we will always take calls. And if we think it's something that should be investigated, we refer many cases back out to law enforcement. So we function much like a triangle, if you will.
So what Laura's saying, folks, if you got a question, call her. Thank you, Laura, for doing this show today. And I want to thank you, viewer, for watching today's episode of Helping Seniors. I hope you've learned something about elder abuse because it's an extremely important topic